It's said to be the first charge of its kind against a member of the clergy in Australia, failure to disclose a serious crime, child sexual abuse. Yesterday, Catholic priest Father Tom Brennan from Toronto, south of Newcastle, was charged with multiple counts of indecent assault and buggery involving 14 boys in the 1970s, as well as a breach under the old common law known as misprision of a felony, in this case failure to disclose the sex crimes of another. Under the justice system, Father Brennan is entitled to the presumption of innocence. Victims' advocates representing 6 organisations welcomed the imprision charge and today renewed their call for a royal commission into what they claim has been an institutional cover-up of clergy abuse. Greens MLC David Shoebridge is spearheading the campaign through the Parliament. I spoke to him a short time ago. David Shoebridge, welcome. This case is now sub judice, so we can't discuss the charges against Father Brennan, but what do you see as its significance in Australian law?
Well, it's genuinely historic. This is the first time we've seen any member of the Catholic Church charged with the offence of failing to disclose. So for decades, perhaps longer, the Catholic Church has had a wall of silence where the hierarchy in the organisation has effectively protected those priests amongst its fold who have been serial sexual offenders. Well, we are now seeing, after decades, this wall of silence slowly being broken down.
They deny that, but we'll get to that shortly. The criminal law has been applied in this case, perhaps for the first time. The law will take its course, and other cases currently before the courts, they will take their course. Why then do we need a royal commission?
Well, we're seeing individual prosecutions of one-off prosecutions against priests, sometimes with multiple charges, but we're yet to see the organisation itself being held to account. It's one thing to have a prosecution against a priest, but we need to have a look at the systemic problems in the church that allowed this to go on for so long and that failed to bring it to the attention of police and the attention of the public.
Mr Shoebridge, we had a Royal Commission in the mid-90s, the Wood Royal Commission, all the institutions, the wards of the state education system, DOCS, the welfare system, anybody who had responsibility for children, including the churches. This is all exposed in the mid-90s at great expense to taxpayers. Now want us to go into even more expense.
Absolutely. When you look at the Wood Royal Commission, there were a series of statements made to that Royal Commission by senior church officials at the time, saying they'd cleaned up their game, that it was all be different. We have seen compelling evidence that nothing changed in the church. And within the Wood Royal Commission, the Commission has said...
You say you've got evidence. What evidence? You're saying systemic cover-up. I know that a cover-up's hard to prove, but what is the circumstantial evidence which would give you the right to, or the need to get terms of reference for another very expensive Royal Commission?
I'll give you just one example. Just one example. There was a priest called Macalinden in the Newcastle Maitland Diocese, now deceased, who came out from Ireland in the early 1950s and then commenced a career of serial predation within Newcastle Maitland. He was sent off to WA, sent off to Papua New Guinea. Time and time again, there's evidence in their church archives of reports of his sexually predatory conduct. A full investigation was done by the church in the mid-1990s, yet no report was ever made to police until 2003. This matter was not resolved by the Wood Royal Commission. It definitely requires a serious revisiting by a fully powered Royal Commission.
One case. Others? Because you've got to get more than one. I mean, it's a very hard hurdle to get the O'Farrell government, who don't want to do it, to move to a Royal Commission with all the expense.
Well, that's just one of many that have been brought to my office's attention. We've had an internal inquiry being established by the church about another incident. What other organisation would be allowed to have an internal inquiry to look at their own criminal affairs, to look at serious and very substantial criminal conduct? Only the Catholic Church is let off with an internal inquiry.
All the victims who've come forward in Maitland, Newcastle have gone to the police. There have been some strike forces, Georgiana and others, and charges have been laid. Multiple charges. Isn't the criminal law doing what it's meant to do as victims come forward? The police have put a lot of resources into it. Their techniques with child protection and investigation have improved out of sight over the last decade.
I take my hat off to those police in the Newcastle Diocese. That local area command has done more than any other local area command to hold the church and hold offending priests to account. But it is nonsense to think that this kind of systemic problem, this systemic abuse of children, was limited to Newcastle Maitland. We don't have the same prosecutions happening in Sydney. We don't have the same prosecutions happening in the South Coast. Indeed, we've got an inquiry in Victoria.
I'm sorry,
but nothing in New
I know
South
there's a
Wales.
parliamentary inquiry in Victoria, but it's a parliamentary inquiry, not a royal commission. The Baillieu government's gone for a parliamentary inquiry, and victims are coming forward. Any victim watching this interview tonight, thinking about, outside Maitland, Newcastle, thinking about what happened to them years ago, in some cases decades ago, is thinking about whether they should go to the police. If they go to the police, they'll be listened to and the police will do a thorough investigation.
But it's a tremendous ask of any victim to go before the criminal courts and to be cross-examined at length in the criminal courts. Many victims have told me about the stress and the anxiety of that process. A royal commission would be an opportunity for those thousands of people who don't have the strength to go before a criminal court to come out and tell their story. It's a moment of reconciliation. The church should grab it with both hands. It's for the good of the church and it's for the good of the victims.
Well, you say that, but if Cardinal Pell, watching this interview tonight, I think it's reasonable for me to speculate, would say the Greens are running a vendetta against the Catholic Church. Clergy abuse, child abuse went across the institutions, not just the Catholic Church, and you're being unfair and putting this out of perspective to the Catholic Church.
Well, that's entirely untrue. Indeed, our call is for a royal commission into the Catholic Church and other organisations handling of sexual abuse. I think all organisations that had the care of children should be willing to have their procedures and their care exposed to a royal commission. But I must be clear about this. The most systemic problems, the greatest number of victims, the greatest number of people contacting my office have come through the Catholic Church. They've been victims of the failures of the Catholic Church. And we need the state government to protect those victims, not the church, to protect the victims. Do you acknowledge,
because Cardinal Pell has said you, the Greens, are out to destroy the Judeo-Christian values and way of life in this country. He's picked you as the Greens running campaigns against the Catholic Church. There's some truth in that, isn't there?
No, absolutely not. Any organisation that failed to look after children, any organisation that failed that duty of care, both spiritual and civil, to children should come under the attention of a politician, regardless of whether they're from the Greens, the Labor Party or the Coalition. This is about protecting children. This is not about the Catholic Church as such. This is about the duty of all politicians of whatever their political stripe. This is no vendetta against the Catholic Church. This is a necessary step to protect vulnerable people.
David Shoebridge, thanks very much.
My pleasure.